Spring Television. Ours it is.
Good evening and welcome to Spring Global on Western Spring Television. Now the headlines. Abducted by Yelsa NPC Federal Commissioner Gloria Zonfor released. Fresh strikes reported in Sudan's capital despite pressure to maintain ceasefire. United States Army temporarily grounds all pilots after series of crash. My name is Damilola Raphael. We begin with security, where the abducted Federal Commissioner of the National Population Commission, NPC, for Bayelsa State, Gloria Zonfor, has been released. She was kidnapped on Sunday evening along with her maid and driver at Ogbakiri Junction on the East-West Road. Confirming the release, the spokesperson for the Rivers State Police Command, Grace Iringe Koko, said she was released yesterday along with her driver and maid. Ms. Iringe Koko, however, declined to confirm whether or not any ransom was paid to secure her release, adding that the command was still investigating with a view of apprehending the kidnappers. Meanwhile, the governor of Borno State, Professor Babagana Zulum, has praised the Nigerian army for fast-tracking, restoring, and enhancing security in communities formerly under the control of Boko Haram insurgents. Governor Zulum stated this yesterday at the St. Paul's dinner organized by the 7th Division in honor of the immediate past GOC and Commander Sector 1 Operation Hedinkai, Major General Waide Shuaibu. The governor said apart from addressing the root causes of insurgency, which his administration is piloting, the cordial working relationship with the Nigerian army has facilitated the gains recorded in his administration's restoration drive. The governor further stated that the restoration of inhabitants to their ancestral homes had not only strengthened their resilience, it has shown that Boko Haram can be defeated. In Africa, the sounds of airstrikes, anti-aircraft weaponry and artillery could be heard in Khartoum early this morning as fighting in Sudan entered a third week. Fighting between the army and a rival paramilitary force continued despite the announcement of a 72-hour ceasefire extension yesterday. Dark smoke rose over parts of the city after strikes by air, tanks and artillery rocked the capital and the adjacent cities of Bari and Omdurman. Hundreds have been killed and tens of thousands have fled for their lives in a past struggle between the army and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces RSF that erupted into violence on April 15. Outside Africa, Turkish defense firm Baykar aims to begin production of its new unmanned combat aerial vehicle UCAV next year. Baykar has come to prominence internationally in recent years because of the company's light drone TB2, which has been used in Ukraine, Azerbaijan, and North Africa. Its chairman, Selçuk Bayraktar, said the project named Kizilelma expresses a whole new future for combat aviation, adding that it is already attracting international interest. Bayraktar stated that the drone is designed to be a highly autonomous, under human purview of course, air-to-air combat vehicle. The 15-meter-long jet-powered UCAV expands the company's product range from slow, ground attack drones to fast and agile autonomous ones that work alongside fighter jets. Until the Russia-Ukraine war, a massive fire was ignited in the Crimean port city of Sevastopol following a suspected drone attack on a fuel storage tank. The Russian-installed governor Mikhail Razvozaev, in a post on Telegram this morning, said the blaze was assigned the highest ranking in terms of how complicated it will be to extinguish. He said the fire was still burning, but it had been contained and no one was injured, adding that the oil reservoir fire would not hinder fuel supplies in Sevastopol. He noted that the 4 fuel tanks that were hit were practically burnt out already, stating that an area of 1,000 square meters had been engulfed in the flames. Sevastopol has come under repeated air attacks since Russia invaded Ukraine as a whole in February 2022. Kiev has repeatedly declared its intention to retake the Crimean Peninsula, which Russia annexed in 2014. In the meantime, Russia has promised it would respond harshly to what it said was Poland's illegal seizure of its embassy school in Warsaw, an act it called a flagrant violation of the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations. Polish state-run news channel TVP Info had earlier reported that police had showed up outside the Russian embassy school on Kielejek Street in Warsaw this morning. When asked about the incident, a Polish foreign ministry spokesman told newsmen that the building housing the embassy school belonged to the Polish state. However, Russia's foreign ministry in a statement said the Polish authorities had burst onto the embassy school's grounds with the aim of seizing it. It said the insolent step by Warsaw, which goes beyond the framework of civilized interstate relations, will not remain without a harsh reaction and consequences for the Polish authorities. Elsewhere, Armenia and Azerbaijan will hold a new round of talks in Washington tomorrow to try to normalize relations. Tensions have been rising again between the two countries over the disputed Nagorno-Karabakh region, while Russian peacekeepers were deployed in 2020 to end a war, the second that Armenia and Azerbaijan have fought over the enclave since the 1991 collapse of the Soviet Union. The mountain region is internationally recognized as part of Azerbaijan, but populated mainly by ethnic Armenians. A spokesperson of Armenia's foreign ministry, Ani Badalian, said on her official Facebook page that from April 30, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Armenia, Ararat Mirzoyan, will be in Washington, D.C. on a working visit. She noted that the next round of discussions on the agreement on normalization of relations between Armenia and Azerbaijan is also scheduled to take place. In the Middle East, 3 people have been injured, with fires and explosions reported after an Israeli air attack on a site near the Syrian city of Homs. Syria state news agency Sana, citing military officials, said 3 civilians were wounded in this morning's attack and a civilian fuel station caught fire. Sana reported that Syrian air defenses shot down some of the Israeli missiles in the sky over Homs. There was no immediate statement from Israeli authorities on the attack. During more than 10 years of civil war in Syria, Israel has launched hundreds of airstrikes in Syrian territory, but does not comment on such attacks. Saudi Arabia and Iran will reopen embassies in each other's capitals within days in a sign of warming relations after the two countries closed their missions 7 years ago. Iranian Foreign Minister Hossein Amir Abdullahian made this known at a news conference in the Lebanese capital, Beirut, yesterday. Mr. Amir Abdullahian did not give specific dates for the reopening of the embassies, but said during the last phone call between himself and the Foreign Minister of Saudi Arabia, they both agreed to work to reopen the embassies in Tehran and Riyadh in the next coming days. The two countries reached an agreement in China earlier last month to re-establish diplomatic relations and reopen embassies after 7 years of tensions. In Asia, North Korea's Kim Yo-jong, the powerful sister of leader Kim Jong-un, has warned that her country will stage more displays of military might in response to a new agreement between South Korea and the United States. Ms. Yo-jong said the agreement reached this week between Washington and Seoul to shore up South Korean nuclear security will only worsen the situation and demonstrate extreme hostility towards North Korea. She added that Pyongyang is now convinced it must further perfect a nuclear war deterrent in respite to the agreement. She added that North Korea would not simply dismiss U.S. President Joe Biden's words as a nonsensical remark from the person in his dotage. South Korea and U.S. had agreed to intensify nuclear deterrence to counter threats from Pyongyang. You're watching Spring Global on Western Spring Television. We will be right back after this break.
Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela was an anti-apartheid activist who gave his all for the elimination of what has been described as the world's most vicious rule of the unjust and man's inhumanity against man. He was born July 18, 1918 in Mvezo, South Africa. Educated and trained as a successful legal practitioner, he took up the gauntlet of a human activist against segregation by the minority white suprematists in South Africa. At the climax of his trial for treason, orchestrated by the minority South African government, the great crusader for democratic equality was prepared to pay the supreme sacrifice to establish majority rule in his native land. He told white jurists that if achieving freedom for his people was worth his life, he was prepared to die. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in Robben Island, described as the most notorious prison in the world. It was from this same prison that he came out as a free man to assume office as South Africa's first black president in 1994. Western Spring Television identifies Nelson Mandela as a watershed character in history. Funmilayo Ransome Kuti was an educationist and advocate of women's rights. She was recognized for her vitriolic comments against colonial policy of taxation as it affected the Nigerian women. Bere, as fondly addressed by her women followers, Funmilayo championed the initiation of universal adult suffrage, which gave an unprecedented leeway for women to contest elective offices and power to exercise voting rights. Married to a foremost educationist and teacher, Israel Oladoto Ransome Kuti, the first president of Nigeria Union of Teachers, Funmilayo Ransome Kuti was the mother of children who inherited her spirit of activism. Olufela Anbe Ololari, the former, a renowned musical legend. She was the first female student of Abeokuta Grammar School and the first female to own and drive a car in Nigeria. The award recipient of Member of Order of Nigeria MON and Lenin Peace Prize, was born on 25th October 1900 and was killed on the 13th April 1978 by rampaging road soldiers in Lagos. Western Spring Television identifies Funmilayo Ransome Kuti as a watershed character in history. Born Jeremiah Oyeni Obafemi on March 6, 1905, Obafemi Awolowo was a prime architect of Nigeria's independence and most consummate advocate of free education and social welfare in Africa's most populous nation. Erudite politician, thinker and philosopher, Awo was fondly addressed by associates and political colleagues, brought his unique attributes to bear on governance in the defunct Western region. He administered as leader of government business and the premier between 1955 and 1958. Obafemi Awolowo's premiership witnessed pioneering in multi-sectoral policy initiatives and execution. The Western region under his administration paraded several enviable records. First television station in Africa, first real estate in Nigeria, first high-rise building in Nigeria, first modern sports stadium in Nigeria, first agricultural settlement in Nigeria, first modern civil service secretariat in Nigeria, and first industrial estate in Nigeria. His face is on 100 naira denomination as a mark of honor for his distinguished services to his country. Western Spring Television identifies Obafemi Awolowo as a major character in history.
You're welcome back for 7 more reports. The United States Army's Chief of Staff has grounded all pilots not involved in critical missions until they complete required training after 4 helicopters crashed in a matter of weeks with multiple deaths. According to a U.S. Army spokesperson, Lieutenant Colonel Terrence Kelly, the suspension of air operations was to take effect from yesterday, with units grounded until they complete the training. He said for active duty units, the training is to take place between May 1 and 5, stating that Army National Guard and Reserve units will have until May 31 to complete the training. 2 AH-64 Apache helicopters collided in Alaska on Thursday, killing 3 soldiers and injuring a 4th, while 2 Black Hawks crashed in Kentucky late last month, leaving 9 dead. 5 people, including an 8-year-old child, were killed in a shooting at a home in Cleveland, Texas, ABC News reported this morning, citing local police and authorities. The report revealed that the shooting took place late yesterday and the police are still looking for the suspect. ABC reported that officials from the San Jacinto County Sheriff's Office received a call about harassment from Cleveland around 11:31 p.m. local time, but when they reached the scene, they found several victims who had been shot. It's disclosed that the San Jacinto County Sheriff's Office told the broadcaster that the suspect was a Mexican man who was intoxicated, armed, and on the run. In North America, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has denounced the rise of authoritarianism around the world and called on democracies to live up to their ideals through trade and foreign policy. Mr. Trudeau made the call in remarks yesterday to the Council on Foreign Relations, a think tank based in the United States city of New York. He stated that if democracy doesn't step up, other forces will step in, adding that there is a need for like-minded democracies to work together to meet this moment. His speech took swipes at countries like Russia and China, while encouraging Canada and its allies to strengthen their commitment to human rights through economic incentives. He further noted that lithium produced in Canada was going to be more expensive because they don't use slave labor. China is one of the biggest producers of lithium, a metal used in mobile phones and electric batteries in the world, behind Australia and Chile.
We don't use slave labor because we put forward environmental responsibility as something we actually expect to be abided by, because we count on working with, in partnership with Indigenous peoples, paying fair living wages, expecting security and safety standards. The world needs to decide, and are still in the process of deciding, is whether or not we're actually going to value the things we value throughout our supply chains. We wouldn't expect someone to be able to open up a company upstream from our towns and dump effluent into the river here. Why do we accept that we pay for goods that come from companies that do the exact same thing on the other side of the world? We have all the resources above ground, and we have resources of lithium and critical minerals with partnerships with Indigenous peoples that we're going to be able to deliver into those supply chains in a resilient way, so you're not dependent on places around the world.
Moving on, Mexican President Andrés López Obrador has called for an end to the agency that oversees government transparency and freedom of information in what critics consider his latest attempt to limit oversight. After recovering from a third COVID infection, Mr. Lopez Obrador resumed his practice of morning press conferences yesterday, where he backed a plan proposed by his political party to shut out the Institute for Information Access and Transparency. He called for the Federal Comptroller's Office, which belongs to the legislative branch of government, to take over the agency's function. Mexico created its Freedom of Information System in 2002, laying the groundwork for INAI, and the constitutional reform in 2013 granted the agency autonomy to ensure it can provide transparency without interference. In other news, Ukraine has protested to key allies, the European Union and Poland, over restriction on its grain supplies yesterday. Ukraine's foreign ministry today said it had sent notes to the Polish embassy and EU representative office in Kiev, expressing disappointment with the situation. The ministry noted that the restrictions on its grain exports via the European trade bloc were categorically unacceptable. The European Commission said yesterday afternoon it had reached the deal in principle to allow the transit of Ukrainian grain to resume through 5 EU countries that had imposed restrictions. Meanwhile, the U.S. Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, FDIC, is preparing to place First Republic Bank under receivership imminently. The U.S. banking regulator decided the troubled regional lender's position has deteriorated and there is no more time to pursue a rescue through the private sector. Big banks, including JP Morgan Chase & Co. and PNC Financial Services Group, are vying to buy First Republic following its seizure by the government, which could come as soon as this weekend. If the San Francisco-based lender falls into receivership, it would be the third U.S. bank to collapse since March. First Republic said this week its deposits had slumped by more than $100 billion in the first quarter. In the meantime, economically sensitive areas of the U.S. stock market are flashing warnings over growth, even as major equity indexes edge higher. The S&P 500 is up 8.6% for the year after gaining 1.5% in April, thanks to roaring year-to-date rallies in shares of Microsoft, Amazon, and other growth and technology stocks that command heavy weightings in broader indexes. Beneath the surface, however, areas of the markets tied to economic sentiment such as transport, semiconductors, and small-cap stocks dropped in April, while so-called defensive sectors are outperforming. Investors cited growing caution among market participants faced with a thicket of concerns from the fears of a possible U.S. default this summer to worries that the Federal Reserve's aggressive monetary tightening could bring on a recession. And to some sports stories, Crystal Palace deservedly edged a 7-goal thriller against West Ham to reach the 40-point mark targeted by manager Roy Hodgson and leave the Hammers in relegation trouble. Former England boss Hodgson has led Palace to 4 wins in 6 games since returning as manager last month to almost certainly guide the Eagles, now 11 points clear of the bottom 3, to safety. Kickoff in South London was delayed by 15 minutes because of an issue with the turnstiles, but there was no shortage of action once the match got underway. Although West Ham took an early lead when Thomas Suchek punished Michael Olise's failure to clear a corner, Palace swung the game in their favour with 3 goals in an impressive 15-minute spell.
Absolute madness, man. We worked hard, we gave everything. I think they're good at set pieces, and that was their main threat today. We did what we could at the end, and we're happy to get the 3 points today. That's what we've been doing since Roy's come in, and we're thriving under him. I think we're playing good football, we're being creative, we're positive when we have the ball, and yeah, no, just glory to God for that one. Yeah, I think honestly, it's a credit to all of us. I said it before, I think we're all working so hard. We're working process. It's not just about the results. We're trying to improve. We're trying to get better, and it's showing now. Yeah, I don't know what he was doing today, but honestly, just happy to get the 3 points. We needed that one today. Our main aim is to continue getting 3 points. We want to keep winning. We've got, I don't know how many more games we've got, 4 or so, and yeah, we want to keep going. We want to keep improving on these performances and see where it takes us.
Away from football, Red Bull's Sergio Perez wins the Azerbaijan Grand Prix sprint race. Charles Leclerc makes it to the finish line safely in the Ferrari and takes second place, while his teammate Max Verstappen had to settle for the third spot. Sergio Perez, speaking after the victory, said it was good to get away with maximum points today, but the main objective was the race tomorrow, which is the main race. And before we end Spring Global, here is a recap of our top stories. The abducted Federal Commissioner of the National Population Commission, NPC, for Bayelsa State, Gloria Izonfor, has been released. The sounds of airstrikes, anti-aircraft weaponry and artillery could be heard in Khartoum early this morning as fighting in Sudan enters the third week. We also brought you news that the United States Army's Chief of Staff has grounded all pilots not involved in critical missions until they complete required training after 4 helicopters crashed in a matter of weeks with multiple deaths. You can follow us on our social media handles on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter at Western Spring Television. You can also watch us live on our YouTube channel at Western Spring Television. Thanking you indeed for watching Spring Global. I am Damilola Raphael. See you at 7.